Well, they have been described in the past as the engine of growth, and I'm talking about the private sector. But are they still playing that role as the engine of growth, or the growth itself is not coming? Are they being given the required environment to grow? What about the current challenges facing the economy, and how are they faring in terms of today? Well, on PM Express Business Edition, we're talking about private sector and the economy. How are things faring for them in the current state of the economy? Is it quite challenging? Or indeed, trust the Ghanaian private sector. They will always survive, even in the midst of difficult times. Surviving as a business in these times, the private sector, what do they want? And how are they managing in these current challenges? I'll be engaging the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation, Osei Bonsu, as we talk about private sector, everything that has got to do with the private sector, and how do they want it done in these times. All these issues wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition. Right back after this break. Welcome to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the private sector and the economy. How are private businesses out there faring in these challenging times? And is there indeed light at the end of the tunnel? Or there is no light at all, and they are currently struggling? How are they managing the situation? And how are they also engaging government to ensure that their stakes or their concerns are addressed? The Private Enterprise Federation is the umbrella body for all the major private businesses and associations out there. So today, we engage in the apex of that body that oversees all the private federations and associations out there. Osei Bonsu is the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation. And it's been ages, and I wouldn't say it has been a miracle getting you in studio here.
Well, it's sort of a miracle, but we've always been looking forward to coming back to engage with you and then to discuss the issues plaguing the private sector, why we are not where we want to go, and why things are what they are, or the way we see things. Then the kind of approaches that we're trying to utilize to make things better for us. When private sector moves up, the whole entire community goes with it. Because we create the jobs, we give the people the food to their mouths, and we create the employment opportunity. And also the wealth. Every time we talk about jobs, businesses don't go to business to create jobs. They go to business to make money, to create wealth. And once they get in the wealth, they want to grow some more. And they need people, and that's how they create jobs. But every time we're talking about the public sector, the government, to create jobs, yes, indeed, we want to create jobs, but that's not our original motive or destination of our investments. We want to make money. Money drives the jobs creation, and that is what we call wealth. Yes.
But now, how are you? I mean, I know you've been working on a lot of things. I mean,
yes, we do.
How are you yourself? How have you been doing over the past months? I know that you've been doing a lot of work privately in terms of the federation and all the rest. What have you been up to at the personal level?
Well, we've been up to almost everything because we're involved in travels in different sectors of the economy, in construction, in banking, in finance, in insurance, in pensions, and all that. So the point is, at the pinnacle of the business angle, the federation sits there. And once they have to cater to the interests of all the participants, core partners, players in the different sectors of the economy. So it really drives us to the point where sometimes we struggle to be able to accommodate all the various interests. But we have to, because that's our responsibility, and we do.
Your federation represents everything about private business in this country.
Correct.
What is the current state
of the
private sector?
Private sector? We're hurting badly.
How bad?
Very bad. Very bad in the sense that cost of money is the driver of what private sector does. The avenues of operations, the rules of engagement, These are things that are hurting us badly. When the laws are not clear, when the avenues are not open, and when the resources to operate are not available, then it makes the private sector to struggle. What do we do to get these things streamlined, especially the cost of money? And when the cost of money is high and the money is not available and borrowing is at the pinnacle or at the height where you can borrow, but even repayment becomes a difficult situation, then the private sector is distressed. Distressed to the extreme core of the word.
Yeah. This distress to the extreme core
of the
that is bad.
It is
situation.
It is. It is. I'm not going to, belabor the point that yes, this is no politics. Let's not play the game. The cost of money, very, very high, and if somebody is going to make a return on their investment, people don't go borrow for nothing just because I want to borrow and then go spend. No, I want to borrow and then expand. No, they want to borrow with the expectation that they'll pay back and expand and then create opportunity for themselves, much more for the partners. And if they don't foresee that future, then borrowing becomes something like survivability. How do I survive by borrowing? Because if you don't borrow, you're possibly going to tank to the point where you now drop out of the system.
Now, I get from you that it's the bit about the cost of credit that has worsened your current situation. I mean, what do you tell those who would argue that it was expected because of the current state of the economy?
It was expected.
I'm just saying, what do you tell those who say that? I get the picture about how worse or how it's gotten to the lowest for the private sector. And what do you tell those who say that, George, it was expected because of where the economy is and the private sector doesn't
Why did
operate?
the economy get to that level, George? Because they didn't listen to good practical reasons of doing business. And that's why where the public sector with the opportunity and the authority to do things, that's where they sometimes fault by not listening to the private sector. The engine of growth, as you said, we are the vehicles that drive, but we don't make the policies. The policies are made by the political leadership. And sometimes the political leadership have 8 years, sir. 8 years. And within the 8-year period, they can learn, they can falter, they can do right, but they got to listen. And if they don't listen, then we all fall victims of the, I wouldn't say ineptitude, but by the ways that they have done business, which the results are what we're seeing today.
But the Private Enterprise Federation, it's huge, some would say. Why did we wait to get here when you argue that they were not listening? Because you guys, I mean, I know how you've been exposed to the American economy and how the private sector there, the lobbying and everything, and they hold the economy. If you tell government that if you don't do X, Y, Z, we're going to react. I mean, just complaining about they not listening, and now I get the picture about the sector being in its worst state. Some will say that, what was the Federation doing with all these organizations and associations that falls under this umbrella?
George, talk is cheap. You can talk all you want. We're not like labor, where they can go with placards on the streets and wave hallelujah, hallelujah. If you don't listen to us, we're going to do this and that. Private sector doesn't operate that way. We do advocacy. We do advocacy based upon empirical research and the data that accumulate from the research. So we support our advocacy with that data. And if we provide that to the political leadership and they don't want to listen or they don't believe in that data and they think that manna is going to drop from heaven, then that is where the challenge is. We do talk. Don't forget that. We cannot be quiet because when we see things wrong, we alert the leadership that, listen, these things are not working right. We see the road you're taking is not going to yield the expected results that you think you're going to get because we see that it's not going to happen. But that's all we can do, talk. Like me and you doing now. Yeah. We can't go stand in the plate and say, hey, we don't do it. No. So we try to advocate and get and engage with the leadership to advise them that the avenues they're going are going to yield these unsavory results for everybody. And that's what is happening.
But someone said that you have the capital, you hold the capital, you hold the money.
Oh,
you hold
no,
the Benjamins.
we hold the money in assets, but we don't hold the money in liquidity in a way that we can withdraw the money. But even if we withdraw the money, it comes back to haunt us. Because at the end of the day, the political leadership is going to go home and new people are going to come. So if we have withdrew the money and then things tanked, who is it going to affect more? It's going to affect the private sector. So we cannot even if we intended and we have the capacity to do, we can't do that because in the long run, we suffer in that avenue.
But some would say that, Nana, that for you, what can be done? Because it appears that things have gotten bad.
Yes.
But then some would say that, listen, can anything be done to correct the situation?
Oh, yes, indeed. There's always an opportunity to correct. There's always avenues. As bad as it is today, if you wake up and you want to engage, you bring all the private sector players, the think tanks, and then as I said, everything is based upon research. The research to yield the empirical data that justifies action to the left or action to the right. So if the data points that, hey, if we don't do this and the cost of money is so this and that, and we don't provide avenues to create the wealth or to create opportunity for others to grow. Key word is grow. The economy has to grow. Private sector has to grow. The private sector cannot be stagnant in every which ways. So we have to find avenues to utilize the resources that we have to grow the economy, to grow the private sector, to grow and create the jobs and wealth. As I said earlier, wealth is the goal of every private sector.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then one thing that you've started critically is about the cost of credit.
Yes.
That has cascaded and worsened the situation for you. What were some of the concerns that you raised when it comes to the cost of credit? Because we knew about government using certain long-term funds channeled through certain banks in driving down interest rates and all sort of things. But it appears that there's a challenge there. If you look at the Bank of Ghana report, how credit to the private sector has contracted over the period as well. And it appears it won't get better anytime soon.
You know, when we did the debt exchange, that was the beginning of the fall of everything. Because we foresaw that if you had invested in me and I cannot pay you, I would not use autocratic mechanisms and say that I won't pay. I have to negotiate with you and say, okay, I don't have the resources today. We're going to stretch it and we're going to add value even to the point that we don't pay you today and you foregoing the use of your money. But we cannot abrogate to ourselves and say that, well, we can't pay because we don't have the resources. Now, these things are going to come back. Let me, predict that. Now, the government says they have reached accommodation or, agreement with the foreign creditors.
More of an MOU, a draft MOU.
Well, MOU is MOU, but agreement is an agreement. MOU is an understanding. But agreement is carved in iron, in stone. And if they have, we want to now go to review what they agreed with the foreign creditors compared to what they did to the domestic creditors. And if there's disparity between the two, the domestic creditors are going to wake up and say, wait a minute, you can do that.
Do I get from you, you're going to push
for
a more of a comparability treatment?
Yes, that's, of course. We are
on that agreement you have agreed already with your domestic creditors.
No.
Why are you not going to go back for comparability of treatment?
No, did we have a choice? And at that time, they hadn't had agreement with the foreign. We were watching. And now that they come back and say, publicize what you have agreed to. Let's compare the grapes between the private sector and the public sector. Different countries have done that. Argentina did something similar some years back, 1972, 78, and all. So now, what the government of Ghana is doing, if there's disparity between the agreement with the domestic private sector and the foreign private sector, then we say, wait a minute, we can't do that. And if they don't pay the foreign private sector, they know they cannot go to the international market to borrow again because they will be penalized over the years. So that's why they're going to capitulate or whatever it is, in the sense that we have to allow the foreign to get away with what they have to do. And if they allow the foreign to do, and you penalize the domestic private sector, we're also going to wake up and possibly result in a legal issue that our monies were taken arbitrarily without...
But an agreement is an agreement. You've agreed with them.
No.
They have also reached an agreement with the foreign bilateral creditors and the Eurobond holders.
The ministry...
Going back again to say, let there be the comparability of treatment here.
George,
some
the
would say
government
it's very
said that
interesting.
we're not going to pay A, B, C, D. We didn't have a choice. Let me take even the federations as a particular instance where we lost our investment because the government refused to accommodate and pay interest from this angle to that angle because they didn't include the accommodation at that time. That is illegal. But they control the purse. They control the legal system. And so we said, okay, we accommodate that and watching. Now that they said they've agreed with the foreign, we now want the documentation to see exactly what the agreement means and how comparable is that, or the equitable, engagement with us or equitable treatment with the domestic private sector. Because that would not be fair. And we think if it's not, then we have avenues to seek recourse.
Aren't you unwinding? Because some are saying that this was even a part of an IMF agreement and everything.
We're not IMF.
Trying to unwind these agreements
we private
could
sector
take the
business.
economy back.
We are private sector businesses. So if the government falters and agrees with an external partner, IMF, and says, okay, IMF, we're going to sacrifice our domestic private sector for the benefit of you, we didn't invest money for that purpose. We said we're investing. You came back and wiped out our values because you are the government. Can the private sector get up one day and wipe out values the government had created? No, because we don't have the authority to do that. So once they have done that, we didn't have any recourse. We only waited and waited. Now, maybe the chicken is coming home to roost because now they have to publicize what they have agreed with the foreign creditors. And if it's not equitable with what we should have been treated or given, then we have to seek redress.
Government says that they are honoring the restructured bonds payments. They are meeting the obligations to you. You've already taken the money as well. Coming back to
the restructuring.
The bonds.
They restructuring the bonds. The guy agreed to the restructuring, or they came back and said, from day one ongoing, we restructured.
There was an option to get out if the private sector was not interested. That is why they say sign up to it, Nana.
There was no option for, let me put the Private Enterprise Federation. We had invested in some bonds and others.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, and they said that we're not going to pay.
Yeah.
And we're going to do ABC. Do we have a choice?
Yeah.
Can we tear away the paper?
Yeah.
Can we just throw away the interest? No, we just waited. And then they came back and said, we're going to, instead of starting from point 1, they starting from point 3. Between 1 and 3, what happened? Who decided? Did we agree? No. They said we're starting from point 3. And because of that, we lost value. And the value we lost, who's going to make up for it? So the point
how has it affected your, and you talked about your current states. How has it affected your ability in terms of the private sector to even hold on the kind of workers you have already? Because it has implications on your working capital, has implications on your liquidity and all the rest. And a lot of employers have been forced to let some people go home and all the rest. How has that impacted on your ability to even, let me use the word, service the existing human capital that you have?
It has lowered our capacity to continue. Lowered. I didn't say erased. It's lowered it, the potential to do things that you could have walked up and do. Lowered it to the point where you struggle, but we still find ways to be able to do things. Not as much as we would have preferred, but in a way that we can continue to, let's say, limp along as we go on, hoping to do better. So it's not the best possible avenue to be doing business, but it's something that we are accommodating because we didn't have much of a choice. If we had a choice, we would have said, oh, forget about it. We take our money and run. But we didn't have a choice. So we are limping along and gradually hoping that things will improve and get better and be able to do business.
And I know in the area of taxes, the Federation has done a lot of work.
Correct.
And what has happened to this work you've done over the years? Because today, there isn't any businessman I would not engage that is complaining about the level of taxes and the hemorrhage.
What's the level of taxes? 25%
multiplicity of taxes and
you're talking about multiplicity
of taxes
and the levies
and all the rest. And for them,
let me not even touch the multiplicity. Let me touch just one, the income tax. The income tax is 25% of everybody that gets income. 25% on 2,000 is different from 25% on 2 million. So the private sector, the lower, the micro, small, and medium enterprises, who constitute the majority of Ghanaian private sector, those are the ones that the income tax equitable treatment is affecting. Because if, as I said, 25 on 2,000 and 25% on 2 million, two different impacts. But then, these taxes are there to pay. So the key point that we did, and we did the report, as I said, the analysis that followed the report on the survey, is that then the majority of the private sector said, okay, then I'm not going to pay. Catch me if you can.
Is that happening?
That is happening every which way.
And then, the difference between the compliance and the avoidance issue, that's what we are seeing right now. That a lot more businesses are now finding innovative means to reduce the tax burdens.
Yes, they wouldn't want to pay. They say, catch me if you can. But if you make it simplified enough, most people will do what we call automatic compliance. They will pay without even you chasing them, because you educate them to the point that they know they have a responsibility. And people go to business to make money for themselves first. They don't go to make money for the government. So if they have to choose between internally generated funding for themselves and responsibility to pay taxes, yes, they know they have obligations, but they got to eat first. So the obligations is to themselves first, and then God do us all.
But there is a moral argument here.
Oh, yes, there
about
is.
The fact that as a private business person, I'm using the lights, I'm using the water, I'm using the infrastructure.
They pay for the light.
Because you think you're overburdened, you are finding legal means to reduce the tax burden.
You talk about tax, you talk about water, you talk about electricity and everything. They pay for infrastructure. They pay for everything. Roads, yes, they pay for it. They were told.
These are the taxes that they use for them. So if you are finding more innovative means to lessen the tax burden.
So the point is, if you want more people to pay the taxes, lower the taxes, stagger the taxes, that if you make 2 million, 200 cedis, you pay 1% or 2%. If you make 400, you pay equivalent, and then on and stagger to the point where you have the 25% at the pinnacle, at the top level. Because now, not everybody is making the top returns. So if you don't, then you're going to utilize the same money that you don't have to chase the recalcitrant taxpayers to come and bring them to book and then ask them to pay. But if you make it simplified and allow the people who made the money to keep a majority of what they call IGF, internally generated funding, then they would be in compliance that you sit home, you don't have to spend a penny, they will remit the taxes to you. And those are the ones that I said, the empirical data dictates that this is what, if you do, Ghana's percentage of tax to GDP compared to Nigeria's percentage of tax to GDP, it's nowhere comparable in the sense that we have the lowest tax to GDP equivalent. Because a lot of people think that, hey, my business is faltering. Now, doom so, what does it mean? The employee has to go home. But at the end of the month, we got to pay them. The customer who is supposed to come to the shop to buy cannot come because there's no electricity. The shop is closed. How do you expect them to make money to be able to pay the staff, much more to pay taxes? So when it comes to the decision between them and the others, then they said that me first. Me first, because if they don't, then they're going to collapse.
But then what happened to the window or the door that allowed the private sector to engage government on all these things? Because it's very critical. And yes. I've heard this from people, and you're also confirming that, listen, we haven't,
George, I won't let you finish that sentence. We haven't met in a long time.
What happened? The pre-budget engagement, the tax policy unit.
Yes.
What happened?
We even had every quarter meeting with the
Minister of Finance.
The EMT.
Yeah, EMT.
We haven't met in a long time.
Why aren't you meeting with the economic
Well, there were
team?
difficulties in the understanding by the leadership that Private sector were trying to monitor things, and it's like not like we want.
Well, that was the reason they gave you.
No, that was
That
the
you are monitoring
connotation.
things too much.
That was, yes, it's like.
But you play a critical role in this economy. There is nothing wrong.
No,
you seeking answers or questions on certain
Thank
things.
you. There's nothing wrong in seeking answers to questions. There's nothing wrong in bringing the issues to your door, so at least you understand that the things that you're doing, the results of that is what we bring into you to see. When we see these things and report and bring it to the discussion, it's not like this is, we want to just hold government to compliance and monitoring them. And yes, it's critical that we monitor because we want to know. And the private sector want to do business because they see that things are not, going on the way that they prefer. If it was going better, believe me, hallelujah, we'd be singing the praises of everybody in town. But it's not. And so we have to bring that to your attention. If you did not realize this is what is happening, that's what we.
So more of you are being so intrusive, and because of that, the economic management team closed the door.
No, we haven't. In actual fact, we contemplating in getting accommodation to meet with them within the next few weeks and bring that discussion to a point where they can also understand the plight of the private sector and the business community.
But now looking at the current state of the economy, some are saying that, aren't you coming too late? Because you were expecting to be there in the past to shape policy directions.
You said things shape.
Or influence. Or influence.
I like that one better.
Yeah.
Influence the direction.
So you've allowed that to pass?
No, we haven't allowed that to pass. That's why I said that there were no avenues to communicate that. But it's never too late to change course.
But that is serious. Looking at
it is
an administration that is more, and the engine of growth, President Kufuor said that the private sector cannot be excluded when it comes to very important things being taken about this economy.
Yes.
And that door has been closed.
Well, the door to me is not closed, but it's just that they're not opening their ears and eyes to see a lot of the things that we want them to see. Because we have brought into, let me take one, the gyration of the currency.
Yeah.
And you know my, my favorite phrase, like, gyrating like spaghetti in the wind.
Oh, I see.
Yes, but
that's what's happening now.
That's what is happening now. And we had brought that to the attention of the leadership of government that, wait a minute, this is not working right. So why don't you do A, B, C, D? They say, well, we're going to go and do this and come back and redress it. We haven't seen that because we thought that, the currency should be strengthened, should be supported in a way that it would allow the economy to at least grow a little bit in bounce and inches and bounce. But it's not happening. So what we suggested is support the currency with gold. And that definitely may be a thing.
Backing the currency with gold, yeah.
Yes, that a lot of countries have done that and supported.
But the Bank of Ghana claims that now they're doing that as well.
Bank of Ghana was doing
assets.
That $20 million a month of purchase of gold. They don't have, that's minuscule. It's nothing. $20 million.
Interesting.
Yes, we were talking about, let me state this categorically here. The enterprise, the Federation said that, and its members said that, support the currency with gold. Government of Ghana doesn't hold a vault with gold in and going to take and support. So engage the mining companies that this currency is foreign. We need our resources. God did not put Ghanaians here for purpose of foreign invasion, for the purpose for the benefit of Ghanaians. So if the currency is faulty, Ghanaians are failing, we want to take the gold that you guys are mining up to the tune of $1 billion and support our currency. Once it stabilizes, we're still going to give you, we're not going to abrogate like different sectors of the world where they nationalize these kind of mines and others and then say, this is ours, so we're going to take over. We said negotiate and do this to support the currency and at the right time, give it back to them to continue business. Now, it didn't happen for whatever reason. And the point is why. If you have seen one of these mining contracts, this is mines in Ghana for Ghanaians, but we contract with foreigners to mine it. And the contract allows them to keep the resource that they take any and everywhere except maybe bringing it to Ghana, except to pay their staff. You know, these things are not lending itself or leading itself to the benefit of Ghanaians. So the currency, people chase it and it still continue to gyrate in every which ways. So the government has to do something about the currency. And as you said, Bank of Ghana is buying, and indeed Bank of Ghana is buying about $20 million a month of gold. That is minuscule, tip of the iceberg. It doesn't help any. Why don't we go full blast, ballistics, and take whatever is ours and do as we want to stabilize our currency and then hand it over once the currency stabilizes. The government has not done that. And we're tiptoeing around these things. For what reason? I don't know. And these are some of the questions that we want to have answers to when we meet with
So it appears that your proposals were not taken. That's why we have gotten here, because this was more of a radical approach in trying to stabilize the currency.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the reason why. We thought that's one of the solutions.
But that was not taken.
That was not taken.
And that has contributed
and so far, we see that since it's not been taken, the currency continues to slide. You know, if you look at the currency from even a few months ago to the level of the exchange with the US dollar, the euro, and the British sterling, you see that things are really going back. Yes.
But then what do you tell those who see that you have not taken the federation? Something that maybe you have underestimated your powers. That, listen, for instance, the currency issue, for instance, it is impacting badly on your business. Standing and saying that we've made proposals, you're not listening, you're going back. Some will say it is not enough.
Well, I would love to listen to those who say it's not enough and take advice as to how
move more and put pressure on those who are managing this space.
How much more
take action that protect private businesses.
I love to learn. I love to find common ground with my partners. Not all of us share the same sentiments.
Yeah.
But whatever would move the currency level to the point where the parity is in our favor, I would love to do that and go tandem with them to the leadership and say, wait a minute, this is collective action on the part of the private sector. Because we need to sing the same song. We need to open the same book. And we need to, travel the same routes to be able to achieve this parity. But unless we do that, and somebody is saying that, hey, let the imports come. Somebody says, no, import substitution is the angle to go. There are various ways, but we got to make sure that we sing with one song, that the end result is to make the economy stronger, make it available in a sense to the private sector. Private sector, because they are the only ones that pay taxes. Don't forget, governments don't pay taxes. Yeah. Civil society don't pay taxes. It's private sector that pays.
Some will say it is debatable.
Well, if you pay, show me the receipts.
Yeah.
It's not a debate. It's the receipts that account for whatever.
But how bad is this city situation affecting your operations? I mean, it's obvious that it's quite terrible.
It is.
And for you, moving on, what are some of the immediate actions, apart from what you propose, that should be taken? Government says that it's a confidence issue about the economy. People are speculating. These are the reasons, and it's work in progress. Yes. We'll get there very soon. Yeah, are you convinced by all these assurances? And even what the Bank of Ghana says, that we are doing A, B, C, D. We are taking over the large payment by these big businesses, the commercial banks and all the rest. We are trying to clamp down activities of speculators and all the rest. And this is the monetary bit. Government is doing their fiscal bit. About more than $2.4 billion should come in before the end of this year. Satisfied with these interim measures that government and the Bank of Ghana put on the table?
George, the grassroots of our problems are our imports. That's why we're chasing the dollars to go and pay for the imports. If we have import substitution products here comparable to what the imports are, then the Ghanaian will be comfortable to purchase that and use that. That is one of the things that we have never been able to do in our environment, because everybody wants to wear the jacket that you and I are wearing, because, and everybody wants to eat in the restaurants and do the sausages and all. But import substitution locally, if the private sector doesn't have the resources, so government can flow the resources at affordable pricing for private sector to manufacture and grow these domestic import substitution products locally. Let me give an example. Take one, poultry. How are eggs, the cost of eggs today? They're going sky high. The eggs are the ones that create the layers, and the feed that we do, the millet and the maize and others, provide the resources. The government borrowed, I think, 420-something million US dollars from Africa Development Bank. Please give that to the private sector. Let's do a value chain approach in poultry. Let everybody in poultry come together. Who is going to do the eggs? Who is going to do the layers? Who is going to do the feed, the correct feed? And then you have a band of the doctors going around from one to the other, feeling for the sick chicken, and then the people that do the processing. This is a value chain approach. You don't leave every 40 poultry farmer to do their own from A to Z, and that's why they're failing. We know we're spending over 300 million a year for foreign imports, and we can do, and the taste buds of Ghanaians, if you allow, prefer the local chicken. And if they prefer the local chicken, let's grow that to the level. So you have Afram plains, grow the millet, the maize, the sorghum, and everything, and then the players that can do the good quality feed, let them do that. And let a bunch of, as I said, the doctors roam around and care for the sick chicken and all. If we do those kind of things, that's the practical things that the private sector can do. And the resources coming from where? From government that they borrowed. Now the government borrows, and we don't know where the money goes. We don't know where the money goes.
That's interesting enough.
Very interesting.
The private sector says, because they said they are paying you contractors, service providers, you are being paid.
I don't know who contractors. As I said,
service providers who are part of the federation.
One element is a chicken, what we call the chicken exchange. The chicken exchange is let's grow from the eggs to the layers, to the broilers, to the doctors, to the processors. We did a research some years back with one of the institutions that if we spend $200 million a year, we will cut the chicken chase within 3 years. Have we done that? And this was about 11, 12 years ago. So we still don't know where these monies go. We borrow, and we say we're going to utilize it for the private sector development of these avenues. Where do they go? I don't know. And that is where we would love some answers, because unless we do that, we always be chasing shadows with the imports coming in. And the imports is what is affecting us badly more than anything.
Now, holding your proposals on the CD constant, some economics here, in terms of the variable of these proposals that government has put on the table, both on the fiscal side and the monetary side, private sector, are you convinced about the assurances from government and the Bank of Ghana that, listen, we are seeing the West when it comes to the currency, at least our best could be stability going forward?
You see, you're talking about monetary policy, you're talking about stabilization of fiscal policy. We talk about practicality of action.
Not convinced, then I get from you. You're not convinced by these measures.
We're not convinced by
these measures. The government claims that it's going to stabilize the
practicality
currency
of the thing, because all these measures are in place, and the city is gyrating every which ways. So what is left? The practicality of action that will allow people to feel, to know, to get their feed, and to get their feel, and to get the results for themselves. So we have to work together to make sure that the private sector that carry the burden of employment, the burden of taxes, would be able to yield enough returns for themselves, much more, to pay taxes and carry the rest of the population with us.
The bit about, and again, I'll come back to the current environment and how some of your members are surviving, because there are other multinationals who are also members of the Federation who are looking at realigning their business and all the rest. How bad is that situation where some are saying that because of the current environment, you're looking at we are aligning our operations and relocating and all the rest. How bad is the situation, Nana?
Let me re-emphasize the tax element of these things.
Yeah.
Every time you hear government says, oh, we've been successful in attracting FDIs. What does FDI mean? Foreign direct investments.
Yeah.
Yes. What did they dangle in front of the foreign direct investors? Tax exemptions. Now, when you give tax exemptions to the big players that are coming in, because you want to just tell the voice that you have attracted these guys to come and work here, what did they leave in return? They take the government money. The tax exemption is government money. Monies they should have paid to government to prosecute its agenda, to invest in various angles for private sector and Ghanaians. They said, we're forgiving that to you if you relocate to Ghana. You forgive that. We said, okay, if you want to attract them, come to some terms. The terms meaning, if we give you the tax exemption of one city, take 25% of the one city in the environment, your catchment operational areas, to invest in that areas. Take another 25% and work with the domestic private sector involved in that sector. And then take another 25% with another sector or private sector unrelated to your sector. So that means 75% of the 100 that we're forgiving you, you're reinvesting in Ghana. And then the 25% add it to what you want and return it home. No, it doesn't happen that way. The 100% goes with them, and that is what is feeding the exchange gyrations, because they don't use cedi for their currency. Their tax returns that they're yielding to return home is in foreign exchange, and that foreign exchange is coming from the back of the private sector. So that type of tax exemption that we said, good, you want to attract them to come, let them come. But work in this area, we will all grow together.
You think it's been favored to the...
When the guy has tax exemptions of one cedi, 100%, and the domestic private sector is paying, the carriers even pay per diems per day to get their ticket to carry the load in the market. The carriers, they pay. So how do you grant tax exemptions to the big players?
There is currently some exemptions before Parliament for some businesses, both local and external. What is your advice to the Finance Committee? What is your advice to Parliament in approving these tax exemptions?
We have met with them some time before, and we always talking to Parliament that, look, tax exemption is an avenue you can use to attract. But the distribution of the tax exemption is that they do not take the 100% of tax exemptions away out of this country, but let them utilize that in improving our lot. As I said, the 25, 25, 25, 75%, let them take the other 25% out of our system to go home because they came to relocate here. But if you give them 100%, why did they come here? They came to repass, and they yielding the results and laughing all the way to the bank to their homes.
Your advice is that, listen, be strategic in this approvals that you want to give to these companies.
You use the keyword strategic. That's a keyword of government. We bring in strategic FDIs in, strategic, foreign direct investors. They come in to create jobs. And you never hear government say create wealth. Private sector is wealth creation. Our mantra is not jobs creation. We create jobs because we want more money. And if more money, you need more hands to grow. And if private sector is growing, more jobs are created. It's incidental to wealth creation.
You're not growing now, so it means that more...
Thank you. So our pockets are empty. And if our pockets are empty, the employees, one of these days, are going to look and say, wait a minute, my employer says they're sick and tired and they come to find the resource to pay us, then TUC will jump up and all of a sudden we are in trouble. So let's have an avenue to create wealth, make the private sector rich. They pay government every which ways that they want. And once the government gets the resources, it will also prosecute its agenda, yielding some favorable climate impactful activity in the communities that will be beneficial to all of us.
Osei Bonsu is the chief executive of the Private Enterprise Federation. We're talking about the private sector and the economy. There are still some issues to tackle with the sector. Don't go away. This is PM Express Business Edition. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the private sector and the economy. How are they faring in the current environment? And is the outlook that bright for them, or they are still struggling? Now, Osei Bonsu is the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation, engaging him to get his thoughts on how are they surviving, what are they put on the table to ensure that their concerns are indeed addressed. Nana?
Yes, sir.
Do so. I mean, how are you guys managing the situation?
Difficult. Very, very difficult. Even coming here this evening was a difficult undertaking. The drivers couldn't find my house, and we had to rush through some darkness and all. Now, let me give you a scenario. An employer that has about 10 employees open their shop every day. Then yesterday they closed, so the staff have to go home. The shop has to close. No income, but liabilities to the staff, liabilities to the rentals. Those are some of the incidents of doomsday. So the doomsday is really, really hammering the private sector's ability to perform, to live up to the levels, you know. So what we want to do is engage with ECG. What is it that they need to do? That's a responsibility of government.
Haven't we passed the engagement state? Because, listen,
well,
I mean...
You see, sometimes
engaging to do the right thing, or to do what they have to do, or government giving them the money to buy fuel for those terminals.
Is it the government refusing to give them money to do
because we understand it's a money issue. It's not a generating issue, that's what we understand. Unless, I don't know what they've been telling you, Nana.
You know, if it's a money issue and the government is making it difficult for private sector to become profitable in return to pay taxes, then they cut in their nose to spite their face. Because obviously, the private sector is not going to be able to get the income much more to pay the taxes required on that income. So the doomsday is really killing the private sector's ability to grow. And this is very dangerous. Under the conditions, the current conditions of AFCFTA, where everybody is looking for their private sector to do more export or to do local export-oriented businesses and substitution of imports. If we're not, then we're not going to grow.
But then I knew that the Federation was working on some things to improve the energy mix, renewable energies and all that.
We had made our recommendations.
What happened to that one?
We had made our recommendations. There's an energy mix that mini hydros or hydros versus solar and others. Why is that not being, VRA is engaging, increasing the energy mix by 30%, utilizing, various solar sources and all. These things, I don't know about the inner workings of ECG, to be frank. But I see that we're not achieving results. If anything, we've been worse off than yesteryears. And that is not fair. Because the private sector, this is today. Tomorrow, next day, and the next day, the private sector is going to fail and fail miserably if we don't encourage any avenues to move them to the level where they can create import substitution. You see, what we also advocate is policy engagement with our peers, our peer neighbors, Nigerians, others, Sierra Leone and others, that you take your high ground on X, we take the high ground on A, and then the parity that we do the common transfer or common knowledge, and then we trade more among us. The competition is coming. The MENA countries, those not African countries, they are stronger, they're more polished, they have more capacity. If we don't put our house in order, the AFCFTA is not going to be beneficial to us.
Some are saying that other countries have started taking steps. It appears that we may end up housing the headquarters.
Oh, yes.
But we wouldn't get the expected benefit
the
of it.
headquarters is the headquarters. I mean, to me, the
But the real
parity,
businesses in Ghana here,
Yes.
the private sector wouldn't benefit from this.
No.
Others have started taking
if we
advantage of
don't
that
make
already.
the extra effort, let me tell you, our one is to have MOUs with Kenya, MOUs with South Africa, MOU with different countries that keep your strong parts. We keep our strong parts. And then the common ground, we trade among ourselves, and we use a common currency, one, to settle our differences. We don't always go and depend on the dollar or the euro or the British pound.
ECO has struggled all over the years. It appears that we are not committed to it.
Yes.
We keep on pushing it back.
Yes,
So it will be an illusion than a reality.
George, we don't want it to be an illusion. This is the common ground that we open our corridors. And we, because we had the headquarters, we have opened our corridors. Everybody can come in. Do other African countries open their corridors to us? Not really. And even if they do we have capacity to compete over there? That's also another
Is that your
matter.
fear? That, I mean, listen, we may end up not really benefiting from...
Not really.
Fact.
Yes, that's our fear. That's our strongest fear. We may end up not doing exactly what we need to be doing.
Can we do anything now to correct that?
Yes, we
And
can.
what is PEF doing about that?
That's the avenue that we're talking about. Cost of doing business should be lowered enough for us to be able to compete in our own backyard. Somebody's bringing bacon here. We cannot even manufacture bacon. If somebody is bringing something that we can, if collectively we had sat back and find avenues to partner ourselves and do, we could. But we're not, because we don't have the resources. We talk about food, common food. Go to a farm place, it's empty. One of our best areas.
Why is it empty, Nana?
Because nobody's cultivating.
Why are they not cultivating, Nana?
Because they don't have the resources. The resource has to come from government. The resource, you say private sector go.
The government said we're doing planting for food and jobs and all those things.
Oh, well, wait a minute. Talking about planting for food and jobs, the acronyms are beautiful, but the results are woeful.
Nothing is happening?
Well, if you
Where
see
did
the
all
results,
the monies go?
Well, I don't know.
But that is serious. Because
You see, we want the government to say that, okay, PLJ, planting for food and jobs, we're giving 50 million to PEF. You and your members demonstrate how you can yield better results than what the government can do. I will put the challenge there, and let's see how we do. The private sector will go to town, we go and generate the feed levels that people can depend on. We cannot use acronyms to say that we're doing better. No.
But where did the money go? If you're talking
I
about
don't know.
planting for food and jobs and
I'm not attacking that.
No, I know, but I'm saying that Afram plains are empty.
Afram place is.
And people will look at some of these programs and the money that was devoted that, why should this be happening then?
Why should that happen? Why should that happen? Governments don't do. Governments provide the resource. Private sector undertakes the action on the ground to create the opportunity, to create the product for us to be able to compete. If we don't follow this practice, and with government programs that they're going to do A, B, C, and you have all these chain of government programs, at the end of the day, what happens? They don't yield the results. With our food capacity, resources to even store feed, store food, store various resources, our foods go to waste. You have a lot of waste in our system if you have paid attention to our food structure. These are things that can be forestalled if we pay attention. So we have to build storages, food storages. You see some Chinese comes and they build and they charge. And the private sector, domestic private sector, we sit and watch. Why? Because we don't have the resources to do. I said the cost of money is high. If the cost of money was low, or the private sector is being given maybe preferential treatment, that because of the situation that we find ourselves, we're going to provide this resource for you for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and let's see that what you can yield. I will want to throw the challenge and see what we can do.
Because is it that then the support was not well targeted when it comes even the agricultural space?
I wouldn't want to I said the avenues of engagement were not proper. Anytime you have a public sector investing the resources themselves, the yields are low. But if you engage the private sector, and I said they would get the better yield, and much more on top of the yield, pay taxes. That's a two-pronged thing. Pay taxes on the back of that. And definitely the government is going to be better than before it started the program or the project. We have to do better than that. We can't just watch every time that the private sector's hands are tied because they don't have the resources. And if they're going to borrow, the cost of money is so high, the cost of debt is so high that they cannot even make ends meet.
No, I know that, I mean, your members are workers. They contribute to the SNIT scheme. There are some who are pushing for a whole restructuring of SNIT. So what do you make of some of these proposals?
You see, SNIT is a collector of funding. They collect our pension schemes. So they are accumulating a lot of resources to be able, but they have to invest them. And I know from previous years that they were investing. Yes. I wrote the third-tier pension. I did a research. When I first came to the country, we only had one pension scheme. That was the first SNIT pension. And we did the research and we realized that we have to aggregate all of them together. And once we do, we'll be able to accumulate more. Indeed, then we added the dimension of the individuals adding a value to what they want to acquire when they go on pension. So we added additional 17.5 to make it 35. So now SNIT is 18.5, the individual is 5%, and then the additional 17.5 make it 35. The third tier is not having the encouraging performance as we anticipated because we're not making it loud enough for people to appreciate that I can add and reduce even my tax burden by deducting 35% instead of 18.5. Okay. SNIT is an avenue which has accumulated a lot of wealth. How they invest, I don't know. I have not. That avenue, I refuse to get involved in that or pay attention to that. But I think they can support a lot of resources, or provide a lot of resources, because they also have a responsibility to their contributors. So they cannot just package the money or pack the money in one side. They have to invest it. And when they invest in prudent investing guidelines is very important, so they don't lose value. So I think with SNIT, I wouldn't begrudge them as you had.
But some have questioned their investment decisions. Some have questioned how the scheme are being managed and all the rest, and think that some are calling for an overhaul of the whole scheme and all the rest. Are some of these calls justified?
Well, I have, as I said, I haven't paid attention to the results. I like the structure of our pension scheme, the 35%. I like the structure that the individual, you also have opportunity to add 17% to any destination of investment that you want. So even if you don't like SNIT, don't, work yourself against that. Let them invest for you. But when you go to your third tier, you have an opportunity to direct your fund manager as to where the destination of investment which you can do. So I think that is something that we should be able to work on. So far as SNIT is concerned, if it's not, the leadership of SNIT, I think is they are appointed by government with TUC
organized labor,
yes, as part of. So that definitely should be a collective responsibility of both the worker and the public sector.
Because they've been in the news for a lot of interesting reasons, and even trying to disinvest the interest in the hotel and how it's being sold, and all sorts of questions about that.
I heard when I came back that the hotel system, those that are even making
about
money,
6 of them are being sold to a politically exposed person.
Oh, that I don't have enough evidence, so I don't have enough argument to go on that. But if that's the case, it's not proper. But at least if they want to divest themselves from that hotel, then I think there must be some way to attract some people with the deep pockets to be able to. But even then, I wouldn't want to sell them outright, except if they are deep hemorrhaging their pockets of the SNIT fund.
The IMF has talked about the outlook being good. I know that one of the critical things when you do your surveys is about the situation now and the expectation. Do you see light at the end of the tunnel?
I can only see light if I see policy directives that are changing our investment decisions, in the sense that if we are not going to empower our domestic private sector, there's no way that we're going to yield the volume of resources needed to invest in our infrastructure, invest in our economy. Let me take example our roads. Let me take example our buildings. Our housing deficit is around maybe 1.8, 1.9. Ghana has abundance of clay, and clay can be converted to bricks. As of now, bricks cost more than cement blocks.
Oh.
Our forefathers were living in brick houses. If you go to the United States and United Kingdom and all these beautiful cities, there are a lot of skyscrapers are bricks. If we try to make bricks, and they're going to be affordable, if we concentrate on how to make bricks, and we utilize them, or we mandate that every housing, government housing, public housing, should be made up of local raw materials, or at least 50% of the materials that go to make them should be made up of local raw materials. Bamboo and bricks and all, porcelana. We should be able to utilize our resources. We don't let everything that over there, and then we see that, you see people write, oh, they're beautiful cities and all. Yes, look at our roads. Go to Kumasi or CSIR, road research, go building road research. They have made some roads within their compound, 18 years, not be refurbished. Nothing has happened. So that means we can do those.
And why are they not engaged? Because I knew CSR did a lot of work in that area when
That's what I said. We have a lot of research, and the data supports that you can test and utilize some of these avenues. But they don't make policies. You see,
sleeping giants, some will still call sleeping giants.
You see, you make the research, but the policy, if the policy maker disregards, what do?
But when their actions impact you badly, some will say that the buck should not stop at the place where they say that they are not listening to me, George.
You know, it's not the fact that people don't want to talk. I think these researchers will want to make noise. But then if they make noise,
as well.
If they make noise to the level where their advice is taken as noisemakers, and it's not being taken to the point where they can make a difference so far as the resource, accommodation or the employment of the resource to do things. Government is going to build 50 hospitals. Made up of what? Says, okay, we're going to build 50 hospitals from...
Agenda 111. Why the Lieutenant you think is not being well prioritized?
I think yesterday I called the Professor Jambafo, who is the head of the UNDP, National Development, NDPC, I mean. And I think the point is, let's all come together. Let's all build our country from the resources that the government, God gave us. The raw materials, use the knowledge of the researchers and the CSRs and the others, and then bring the financiers together to make monies available, as you said, the pension schemes and all. So at least we can benefit from our own resources. Let's not wait for IMF to say that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
We are in their program now. We are in their fund program now.
I don't know how...
I don't know whether you thought that was the way we should have gone. We are in the IMF program now.
Yes, what I'm saying is I don't know what kind of binoculars the IMF is using to see the...
But they are seeing the economy is turning around. We are seeing signs of stability. Is the private sector seeing a different thing?
Well, I don't see what the IMF sees.
Signs of stability in the economy. They think that there's been a correction. We're going to grow more than expected inflation is going to come down? You think that are they talking, if they are singing jars?
And that's what I'm saying is, I don't see the empirical data that they're utilizing to analyze.
Inflation is coming down from 52 to about 25%.
Fine.
You don't think inflation is coming down?
Oh, no.
Growth from about 1 point something to about... I mean, this is what they are saying. And
this is what they're saying. What my people are telling me, the cost of money is too high. And if the cost of money is too high for them, they increase the pricing of their products. And if they increase the pricing of their products, the consumer is going to bear the cost of that. And what happens? So if the private sector, I said, doesn't make money, then they will not pay the taxes because there will be no profit margins to pay taxes on. And the government's revenue accumulation is going to be lowered. And the government's ability to prosecute its agenda is going to vanish. Then where's the avenue of the prediction that anybody is saying?
The person and you think that it is still doom ahead? I mean,
no,
you are not convinced. It's not even about the IMF, but the expectation is.
I want to change course.
You are not convinced that the outlook is bright, irrespective
I'll be convinced if the government resorts to allowing the private sector room to grow. When private sector doesn't grow, the end position is not going to be brighter than today. Private sector cannot be stagnant. It got to grow at all costs, no matter what, because the new infants coming, population growth, that need jobs. And the jobs are not going to come when the private sector is not making money to create the wealth, to expand opportunity, to make more money. Governments don't create jobs. The public sector jobs, compared to the private sector jobs, how much? What's the percentage? Difficult, different. So we have to have the avenues, and you said at the beginning of this interview, what was that? The avenues of growth is the private sector?
Yeah, engine of growth, yeah.
Engine of growth. We didn't say that. It was said by people who knew that these are the avenues that if we allow them with the resources and provide the resources, the avenues and opportunities, they would definitely make it for all of us. What prevents us from doing that now? Why don't we do it? We have to. You know, it's there. It's there. Now, if you talk about the rest of the world, the mature economies, the Western world, is almost becoming stagnant. Africa is a growth opportunity for all. And Ghana is one of them. If we come to West Africa, Ghana is one of the leadership. What are we failing? What are we not doing?
Nana, the cost of doing business obviously has quadrupled over the past months. There's always a thin line about absorbing that cost and passing on that cost to consumers.
You're kidding me. George, if you're a private businessman, you're going to absorb the cost?
So the costs are being passed on to the...
You have to pass it on to the consumer.
But I'm saying that there's a level in which you can increase these prices.
You see, there's a level where you cannot increase because then your competitor beats you up and that's what it is. So what we're saying is the private sector costs should be lowered in a way that they can absorb or not pass on the excesses to the consumer. So they themselves said, okay, this time around, we're not going to spend A, B, C, D, or we're not going to increase the pricing. Let me tell you one time that we were driving and we wanted to buy some coconut. And the guy saw the car we were driving and he increased the pricing on the spot.
Because you're driving in a Porsche car.
Because the car we were driving, you know, it's like people's expectation is on the back of what they see. And if the private sector sees that, you know, all these beautiful things that are going and they you know, exerting themselves to the point where they can make money and then they don't want to throw their hands up and say, forget about it.
Nana, your final words moving forward for you, private sector.
Empower the private sector with the resources, the opportunities, the laws, and the avenues of growth. And believe me, we will deliver.
Well, they want to be empowered, and that is where they can deliver. This has been PM Express Business Edition, engaging the president or the chief executive of the Private Enterprise Federation, Osei Bonsu, as in getting the deeper understanding in terms of what the private sector want for them to grow and become that engine of growth and expansion for the economy. I know the debate will go on in the offices and homes about what should be done for you as a private business person out there. This has been PM Express Business Edition. Have a great evening and a great day.